Mangosothu Buthelezi is now speaking. He is speaking, we understand, on developments regarding the Amazulu Royal Family.
Thank you very much for having come. It's a short notice. I've called this press conference because on the instructions of His Majesty the King Mangosuthu Buthelezi, I hereby announce His Majesty's intention of calling a meeting of all the major houses of the royal family as soon as COVID-19 protocol allows such a meeting to be held. His Majesty believes that this meeting is both urgent and necessary due to the confusion that has been created in the public space on who constitutes, quote unquote, the royal family and who speaks on behalf of the royal family. There have been several voices purporting to speak for the family, which have at times been assisted out of ignorance by the media. This has resulted in misinformation, it has resulted in confusion within the Zulu nation. His Majesty believes that this matter must be resolved as quickly as possible to avoid further confusion and divisions within the royal family itself. His Majesty's concern in this regard has been heightened by a letter written, I don't know whether media have been given copies, because the media must have copies. You should know that by now. I'm sorry. His Majesty's concern in this regard has been heightened by a letter written by his aunt, Princess Ndlovu, to the Premier of the KwaZulu-Natal, which opens as follows, quote, pursuant to the letter from the royal family dated the 25th of May, 2021, in terms of which the office of the Premier was officially informed of the decision of the royal family to appoint His Royal Highness Prince Smagade Jackson as an heir to the throne left by the departure of the late Zulu monarch, unquote. This letter goes on, quote, it is further our request that His Royal Highness Prince Smagade is granted the same measure of care and courtesies afforded to His Royal Highness Prince Mangosuthu by the provincial government until such time that the dispute on who should succeed His Majesty, the late King Goodwill Zwelithini Kapeguzulu, is resolved. In addition to this letter, a circular has come to light which reads as follows, quote, Indlunkulu kaZulu, the Zulu Royal House, is having serious discussions behind closed doors in an attempt to find each other. This has led into two main royal houses, which are KwaKhetha Mthandayo and KwaKhangela Mankengane, committing to unite the royal family. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has been having meetings with Queen Madlamini of KwaKhetha Mthandayo, and there is a consensus that the process that led into the appointment of Mangosuthu as king was unprocedural. There is now an agreement that the Zulu nation does not have a king. Mangosuthu has agreed to the reconstruction process and to allow the royal family to start the process from the equal footing. This requires the family to appoint a regent while dealing with issues of succession. Queen Madlamini is a favorable unity candidate for the regency. The family confirms that Kwakhetho Mthandayo does not have any interest to the throne, which is what creates Mrs. Zulu's comfort around Queen Madlamini as regent. As the eldest wife of the late King Zwelithini, Queen Madlamini is most trusted to lead the process fairly and procedurally due to her experience of many years in the senior house of Kwakhetho Mthandayo. The family agreed that it is in the best interest of the kingdom that all differences or misunderstandings are resolved amicably to the conclusion of consensus, where all parties are satisfied with the process of appointing the new king. The royal house believes that the process will eventually bring stability and a common voice in order for the royal family to execute its duties without any complications and in the interest of the nation. The family has also agreed that the unity of the senior house, royal house is sacrosanct to the success of the nation. The family is determined to unite so as to inspire the unity of the nation in order to uphold the great legacy of the kingdom. Unquote. At this point, you'll allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to pause and apologize to the king for him who just read his name like that as Prince and also as just Mrs. Zulu. I'm just reading the thing as it is written. That document, which has raised His Majesty's concern, is a letter addressed to the king himself, using the letterhead of His Majesty, the king's own office. This letter reads as follows, quote, "As you are aware, the family ended the 3-month mourning period in June 2021. We carried out all the required rituals to honor the late Isilo as custom and the late king dictated. It was at the end of this cleansing ceremony that the family stated to the Zulu nation that all discussions regarding the throne will now be able to begin. Therefore, Makeba, addressing the king, this process has begun, and we formally met with the Premier of the KwaZulu-Natal to notify him of such. In light of what has transpired in the recent past, with you supposedly being appointed as the king of the Zulus after the late His Majesty King Goodwill Zwelithini Kabheka Zulu, we as the core members of the house of King Zwelithini write to you to highlight certain concerns we have with your current conduct. Your supposed appointment has not been in line with the legislative framework of South Africa. You have conducted yourself as a Isilo of the Zulu nation when we have not officially been accorded that title as per the legislative framework of South Africa. We instruct that you refrain from acting as a Isilo of the Zulu nation. Any binding or non-binding actions you sign in the capacity as Isilo will be deemed as fraudulent. Unquote. Oh no, I'm sorry. The process to discuss matters pertaining to the Zulu throne as guided by legislation has begun. We have communicated same to the relevant government officials. We are welcome and encouraged to engage further with your family of the late Isilo Goodwill Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu. This letter is unsigned, ladies and gentlemen, but the names listed at the end are as follows: Queen of Gwakhetho Mthandayo, Queen of Linduzulu, Queen of Ondini, Indlu Kabusha, Queen of Damahlahla, Queen of Enyogeni, your siblings. In other words, the siblings of the king. That is the entire message which I was commanded by His Majesty the King to announce, because of all the matters that I've stated. I've also asked my PA to make available to you some of these documents just for your information and background. Let me add that I wrote letters also to all the queens. I wrote letters to all the queens on the instructions of the king, not my own initiative, because, oh, I'm sorry, it seems that I left something. It seems that I left out this portion, I'm sorry. The issue of what is understood by the royal family, quote unquote, needs to be clarified, as some now claim to be the core, quote unquote, of the royal family, to the exclusion of other senior members of the royal family. Moreover, the king was not informed of meetings with the premier held by the Queen Mother and the queens of the late king. The premier himself brought these meetings to the king's attention. The premier is now involved at this level. His Majesty believes that this matter requires urgent resolution. Thus, this announcement. I think I may add that the Queen Mother, Queen Mazungu, Queen Mavis, did tell me that the Premier had contacted her to say that he, the Premier, would like to meet with her and would also like to meet with the queens of the late king. And at that time, since the queens were still in mourning, the queens then apologized and said in their state of mourning, they think that it would be inappropriate for them to attend meetings. Then after the cleansing ceremony was done, then the queens then asked the Queen Mother to inform the Premier, Mrs. Galala, that they were now ready then for the meeting. Afterwards, I must say, the Queen Mother also informed me that the meeting, which was addressed at Damahlahla Palace, where she was present and where all the queens of the late king were present, took place. He said some of the siblings of the king wanted to attend, but they were excluded. She said that they should not come in. And that the Premier, apparently, I'm just summarizing because I was not there, and now this is what the Queen, what I remember of what the Queen told me. She said that the Premier said that since there are now two candidates, she feels that the royal family needs a mediator. And she went on to say that, of course, they can mediate, but also the royal family itself can choose a mediator. Then, in a nutshell, I think this is what the Queen Mother told me. But of course, I was not, in fact, informed about the meeting myself by the Premier. But previously, the Premier had phoned me because the late Queen, Her Majesty, Queen Mantombi Shiyiwe, had actually responded when the Premier asked her with whom must she get in liaise on any matter she wanted to draw to her attention. And she had said that she told the Premier that she must liaise with me as the Prime Minister of the King and the nation. So subsequent to that, I actually indeed received a phone call from Mr. Zigalala. At that time, he suggested that himself, together with the Honorable Minister of Culture, the Honorable Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, wanted to meet the royal family because they thought that now there was actually a situation which needed mediation. At that time, when I informed the royal family at that time, they said no. They thought that at that point they will still handle their own affairs without a mediator. Now that has happened earlier, and the other meeting which took place then, which I didn't know about, took place subsequent to that.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I think His Majesty's Prime Minister was well and clear, but if ever there is someone with a question, you are free to raise your hand and ask any question.
They must introduce themselves and see the media house they come.
Yes, just introduce yourself.
The media house.
And the media house you're coming from. You must be slow but loud so that
I can hear.
So that the Prime Minister will be able to hear what you say.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Yes.
You didn't ask any question.
No, there is another hand up.
Oh, yes.
I think.
Sorry, I'm just taking this off so I can be a bit louder. Diane Hawker from Newzroom Afrika. Good afternoon, Prince Mangosuthu. The question I think that our viewers will have is, just to get clarity, you have these 3 letters of which you've given us excerpts, and they seem to suggest that there's a lot of infighting taking place.
Well, this briefing underway at the moment. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi speaking on behalf of King Msizulu Kazwelethini, and just making the point, he says that the king is not stepping down despite these letters which he's read from, which are being circulated. That's our Diane Hawker asking a question. We'll get the answer in a moment.
Pardon?